Hi guys, thank you for coming onto the show.
Hi,
Uh,
Andy. Thanks for having
yeah,
us.
definitely great to be on.
Yeah.
Chris, Anna, I think what is going to be quite unique in this episode is your appetite and interest in larger HMOs. It's not that often we get people on the show who really quite focused on larger HMOs. Actually, it's really sort of small HMOs that our guests tend to be focusing on. But before we get into that detail, and I'm really excited to do that, could you tell our listeners who perhaps don't know too much about you guys who you are, what you're currently doing, and what's sort of going on in the HMO world as far as you're concerned?
Sure, no problem.
Do you want to go? You can give a bit of an overview. Well,
Yeah, sure. I mean, what we do, as you mentioned, we do larger HMOs. We focus on bigger commercial conversions. We focus on stuff closer to home now, as opposed to sort of, putting ourselves in a car for too long. But yes, we focus on HMOs purely because it works well for us. We focus mainly on the cash flow, which obviously those HMOs are great for. So yeah, what else would you add to it?
yeah, well, obviously, I guess our branding, Parkhurst Properties, which Anna, I
Yeah.
can't take any of the credit for that. So Anna does all that side, and I think yeah, we've been going for 3 years, but probably project wise, for the last 2.5 years. And as you say, Andy, we've been yeah, from day one, actually, we've been doing larger projects, getting involved with from planning, through to all the fun and games that goes with that. And yeah, it's just been something from a commercial conversion perspective. We've just fallen straight in. It might look like we've missed a couple of sort of rungs on the ladder. We've jumped straight up, but actually, I've actually had buy to lets and stuff for a number of years, and then so when we were focusing and deciding we want to get more into there and
I
do
think we
property.
talked about property investment for such a long time, and I remember always listening to podcasts. And you were more into it than I was. I wasn't really interested in any of that. So I remember having conversation, and you mentioned that we should do this and should do that, and we had a couple of viewings here and there, but I wasn't really ready to invest just yet. And then suddenly one day we realized, I mean, there was obviously a lot more to it. We realized that, yes, we are ready. You've got experience, obviously, from a buy-to-let perspective. So you've been dealing with tenants and you kind of know what it
Mm.
involves. But we wanted to scale up a lot more, and then go a lot quicker, which obviously then took us to a HMO sort of journey, didn't it?
So did you? I mean, I guess probably anyone sort of listening go, what made that decision? I think obviously I've been doing property stuff, but Anna went on a networking course, and I think that's probably the bit that Anna went on you went on a progressive property, wasn't it, Masopi event, and I think that got the whetted the appetite for you being fairly new to property, networking, meeting people, and then obviously I work full time, so you were always going to drive it. So you've all of a sudden you've got the interest and the appetite, and things really expanded from there, really,
I think
and quite quickly.
it's worth saying that obviously the main goal for us was to be closer to the kids. Previous to that, I had a very high paced job, and I worked in a sort of fashion industry where I managed high profile stores, and I was always so busy and always at work. I never saw the children, and I felt so guilty for not being there for them. That it really made me think, what can I do to have the time with the family, but at the same time to do something with my time, do something meaningful, and obviously make some money on the side as well, because at the end of the day we want to, we think about the future. Obviously we want to get into a business where kids can benefit from it as well. So properties seemed like the perfect kind of thing for us, right?
Yeah,
And obviously do you remember when I asked you, can I help you with your buy to let? Can I manage it for you? Because there's always been so many different issues here, there, and everywhere, and you've never had the time for it, and you were
mm,
paying a fortune for agents that didn't really do much. So there was a little bit of interest there. We didn't go that way, but when the time was right, yeah, we made that leap into bigger developments, and I think we decided early on what we wanted to do and which strategy we wanted to focus on, didn't we?
Yeah, just to give our listeners a bit of context then, Chris, you're sort of still full time as
Yeah,
an IT contractor,
yeah,
very busy, and you've got 3 kids, so a really busy house as well. And you've been at this for 2 years, and you've got a good handful of big HMOs already. So actually, one of the things I picked up in your case study, which was great, was how much compromise actually and sacrifice you've had to make in the last couple of years to get this to where it is right now. And I know that you've got plans to really expand this. So can you tell us a little bit about that first project and actually how you went from sort of the conception of this idea of investing in HMOs to actually making it happen? Because for a lot of people, investing in a project the size of the first one that you did, and Chris, you've already mentioned the commercial aspect to it, that is kind of looks like diving straight into the deep end.
yep.
It's an amazing project, but can you tell us a little bit about that kind of first project and how you went from where you were, which was not having the experience in the industry, to actually getting stuck into that first one?
Yeah, I think like anyone, we were looking for a project. I'd done the training, done the courses. I was, fully, look, we need to do something, get something. And we were deciding on areas, and we actually found this first project was in Crewe, and we were looking around for what can be done, and we had a certain price point we were trying to work towards, and this came up, and I'm always looking, Andy, at the exit, what that GDV is going to be, and I'm very money orientated. Um, as in, what for me, it's like Beauty and the Beast. As in, it doesn't the building doesn't have to be amazing. It doesn't have to be the best on the street. But if it stacks as a deal, and it's a really good long term investment, and it cash flows well, and could potentially get most of your money out, or so those are the tick in the box exercise that I'm like, that's what we look for. And this one, ticked most of those boxes. It was actually quite a nice building. It was actually an old vet practice. And we we saw it and we thought, yeah, let's go for it. And I think we're both a little bit risk takers, because to a certain degree, you don't, unless you do it, you don't really know what to expect. You can go as many courses, you can listen to as many people, but unless you go and do that and you do it end to end, you don't get that experience, and you don't know all the little hidden things that are out there that you can get burnt on. So I think we've gone through and done that, and then we've gone end to end. We manage as well, so um, you know doing that project was a complete learning curve. And funny enough, Andy, we ended up doing the second one at the same time, probably 3 months into it. So we had another 8-bed as well in Crewe that we found. So actually, and this was all happening during the first lockdown, wasn't it? So we actually had 2 projects in flight. So we didn't just start with one. We had something else come up, and then there were challenges to getting that through. But I think one of the key things that Anna touched on earlier was we had 2 projects that very close to each other, and they're within driving distance. And I think that's probably our learning, that we would never do anything more than 45, 50 minutes from the house. You've got to be there when you're doing that. Yes, I know you can get remote investors, and that works for some people. But I think for us, for what we're doing, for the bigger projects where, you've got, there's a lot of money in on these for the development side, and the challenges that you might get from a builder perspective, which everyone experiences. You want to be close to there and make sure that you're around to answer any questions, queries, because there are things that come up. It's not always problems, or you feel like there's an issue with the builder. It's actually you being able to make those decisions. They're going to save you money, and being close to around was probably our learning. And I think you learn. We made mistakes, Andy. Everyone does. I think the first one, and we had initial issues with the builder, because how do you choose a builder that's done that project before and trust on there? So there was a learning for us. But I can honestly say, looking back, that our advice would be, you've got to jump in when you're ready, because you can think about things too much and overthink it and say, oh, what about this and what that. if the numbers stack, you've got the finances and you've got, you're comfortable with the delivery period and waiting, and then, what you're financing out, everything else you can learn, and that's probably been sort of our learning on those first couple
Yeah.
we've put that forward to the next project and the one after, and the one after that, just as we've gone, so that we don't make some of those mistakes, because they are normally costly when it comes to time or materials, or or the planning side.
At the moment, you guys have got a couple of 8 beds, you've got a 10 bed, and you've even got a 12 bed HMO.
13
Um,
beds.
13 bed
I've got
HMO,
13,
because
yeah.
12 wasn't quite enough. Okay. So, and you've done all this in 2 years' time. So, just Anna, can you tell us first of all how you've actually managed to find these deals? Because these sorts of projects, there's a lot of people struggling to actually find deals. It doesn't sound like that has been especially difficult, or perhaps it is. It always looks a little bit easier. How have you actually managed to find these sorts of properties?
It's a very good question, and it's a question for Chris. Chris is absolutely amazing at finding deals. He is constantly online, searching, looking, to the point where I'm like, "Can you just put your phone down for a minute?" No, but to be, to be fair, he does have an eye for deals. He knows what can work, what can't work. We focus on specific areas, as you mentioned previously. And we know them quite well. So obviously, when something comes on the market, we on it. We know what's been on the market for quite some time. We know, when the new deal comes on, and as soon as that deal, comes on the market, we on it. We don't give anyone else enough time to do a lot of viewings. I mean, every single deal that we've done, we've secured pretty much on a day one, didn't we? So yeah, anything new that comes up.
Yeah, I think if you want something, I think a lot of it is what we've been learning is that if you think something will work, you can make that offer early. Don't go away, think about that. You've got to have obviously you've got to visualize it. It's difficult sometimes. You haven't got an architect with you, and you're trying to think, how many rooms can I get in, or how will this work? But if you go on your gut feeling, and we've always pretty early. Even I've made offers, been accepted actually while I've been walking around the property, and I think that's something that's been key. But also, I think a lot of it's luck as well, Andy. The 10 bed and the 13 bed, I got during the first lockdown, and I'd seen one property, so the 10 bed in Stockport. I'd seen that advertised, and how it just stays on an agent's book, even though it's under offer. And I tried to get a viewing for it, 4 or 5 months previous. And there's a good story here. I thought, I just clicked on it, and I noticed that they changed it from, they didn't say it's sold, but it said planning permission granted for a 10-bed HMO. And I thought, why would they ever change the blurb on it if it was under offer? Rang him up and said, "Oh yeah, it's just come back on the market. The guy didn't complete." And obviously, at the time I had to do my own viewing. It was during lockdown. It was fine. They get the keys and do that. And I got it for a good price, and there was no other competition. Till after, probably later. But that was just more luck. You might see something, but it's worth revisiting something that you might have seen and been told it's under offer, and they do keep it on there, the agents, and follow up, because they're not great about proactively following up to you, even if you say, like, let me know when it's come back and available. And I think that one was sort of real, luck. And the other one as well was during the lockdown as well. And I think it was priced accordingly. We grabbed it, well, an offer accepted within a couple of days. I think the market's slightly different now than maybe a couple, 18 months ago. But yeah, I think, some of these deals are, I have got, I do religiously every day look, and I guess, it's all about sort of networking as well with some of the agents, following up, trying to get, some, leads on things. So you won't find that overnight, but once you've bought from an agent, then they know, they trust you, and they'll be, more positive when you go to view something else, to maybe sell you as a potential buyer to the client. And I think, you know, that doesn't happen overnight, but that's something that I've noticed as well, that we've been trying to do more networking and working with the agents and being, you know, more receptive to our offers, because they know that we'll go and complete. And you know, and yeah, it's not anything special that I'm doing that anyone else they can't do. It's just I'm just doing religiously. I do your right moves. You know, there's some other portals out there. You know, we look at auction sites.
I think the
Yeah,
key
but
is to really be searching and looking daily to make sure you don't miss anything, because obviously, a day or two or a week can make a huge difference.
yeah,
Just going back to our first deal, we both
Yeah.
saw it. I was at home. Chris was working in London at the time, and I remember, an email came in with that deal, showing. So we were both texting each other saying, "Have you seen this? This looks amazing. It's just the right deal for us." So we obviously booked the viewing quite quickly, and then I put an offer on it pretty much straight away. It was a Friday. Do you remember we were putting an offer on it and talking to the agents about, how badly we wanted it, and then we had nothing from them. And then on Sunday we got an email to say that the property has sold. Do you remember that?
yeah,
And it sold, and we obviously got a call on the phone to the agent on the Monday, and managed to secure it back. But it does show that those deals, those good deals, don't stick around for too long, do they? So the key is to be constantly on them.
yeah, yeah.
Because they go so quickly, don't they? They do go very, very quickly, and if you're not there to see them, obviously you might miss out.
I picked up on something that you said earlier, which I think is so important, and you described Chris as sort of being constantly on Rightmove, but I think it is that consistency piece. So actually, this particular deal and perhaps the other deals that you've done haven't necessarily been out of the public domain and out of the sort of the view of everybody else, but actually that consistent approach to checking and putting the calls in and just making sure that you get your offers in and chasing things down is actually often what generates the best results. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people do overcomplicate the idea of trying to find deals, and sometimes it is just good old fashioned turning up, making the inquiries, making the calls, doing the viewings, putting the offers in, and just repeating that process again and again and again. Can you tell us a little bit about the process that you went through of actually deciding how you were going to refurbish not just this property actually, but these other properties, the big HMOs as well that you've been doing, guys? Because there's a lot to think about. I know on the HMO that you mentioned there, that the kind of the first one, you spent about 180,000, I think, on that one. So these are big projects. How did you go about deciding what you were going to need to actually do?
I mean, we work with a
Yeah.
team, don't we?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good question. We probably we didn't. So what you start off, you find a really good architect, and then he introduces you to a structural engineer. Obviously, we found a solicitor. So you start building your power team, and then you've got building regs and how's that going to work, and you're going to use third party or the council, and find the builder. We didn't have all the answers, but we just, I think the key thing for us, and that's it, is the architect to actually know that we had that we could do that, we could do what we wanted, and then from there, then you're understanding a bit more of the challenges about what it's going to cost, because HMOs are really tightened up on a lot of the planning requirements about what you need to do and the scope and the spec. So the refurbs I've noticed going right up, and that's something we probably weren't aware of at the time. About insulation and soundproofing and all these things where maybe 4 or 5 years ago it was a lot easier. And I think yeah, we had to be careful about understanding the requirements, and then obviously then pricing it accordingly about what we could spend, and then what what it's going to be at the as a GDV. And I think, for us it was a complete learning as you go. We just didn't we didn't know everything, but we knew the right people that could introduce us. And as I say, we learned we would say learn on the job. And I think anyone else would, you do that. And to a certain degree, I don't think anyone who's might be doing a 5-6 bed, um, there's probably not a massive difference between a 7-8 bed. Yes, you've got more from it, because if you're doing it within building control, both sides, I don't think there's a lot more that you wouldn't be able to do. So I wouldn't ever put anyone off doing that. Um, if you're doing a commercial building, yes, it's going to cost more per square foot, and there's more challenges in there. But from a building perspective, but it's not outrageous, but you get more for your money. So you'll always get more per square foot for a commercial building than you will do for a residential. So working that out and working numbers, it does, presents a few opportunities for you if you think on that mindset. That's what I was thinking. I think when we did my deals, I got very nervous about how much money we were going to leave in and the end valuations, which probably prompted us, maybe even from day one, around doing the larger stuff, because I'd seen all this these commercial valuations and what went on, and I probably got drawn towards that, rightly or wrongly, and that's probably been the way that we've gone. And I think that's a bit of a black art, the final valuation, how the surveyor sees your property and the valuation. Yes, you can do as much prep work and understand how other things are being revalued, and trying to understand a bit on the variable, the variables that are used for whatever area you're in. But I think as a learning end to end, we didn't have all the answers, and that's anyone maybe listening thinking, oh yeah, I don't know, they don't know, we didn't. But you will get a good power team, and we learned our power team through networking. We went to events. Yes, we learned people through Progressive, but I think we went to some other networking events, but also these Facebook groups where you see people that get promoted by other investors, and that's normally a really good sign about who you can at least start a discussion with. And we, that's how we found our architect, and then other things sort of snowballed from there, which is always a concern to anyone. You can pay a lot of money and not get a good service, and obviously that's a worry on the costing side. But I guess to a certain degree, when you're doing your first one, you want a little bit of hand holding. We got a little bit of that, but I think more importantly, we got pointed in the right direction of the right people to speak. And then obviously after that first project, everything becomes slightly easier because you've got like a built up power team for the majority of it in your area, if you invest in a certain location or close by.
What I would add to that is that it's always advisable to get quite a few quotes, not just one or two, but to get 3 or 4 quotes from the builders. So when you're starting out and you don't know how much it's going to cost, getting a few quotes from different builders can give you a very good idea where you should be, more or less. We wouldn't advise for anyone to go for the cheapest quote, or the more expensive one. The one in the middle is probably quite right. But yes, do get a few quotes, and that's what we did, didn't we? To give us understanding how much our first refurb should really cost.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to build costs, and what you mentioned, Chris, as well, sort of the uncertainty of end valuations, like it really is a dark art. And I try and remind everybody regularly that, if what you want is all of your ducks in a row, if you want absolute certainty, this is not the business to be in. There is a point where you can do all of the learning you can surround yourself with as many great people as you can with experience, but there is still a point where there will be a question mark on the page. No matter what your spreadsheet says, no matter how good your assumptions are, it's still a question mark, and there's a leap of faith involved. And with sums of money like what the amounts we're talking about here in these sorts of projects. I think for a lot of people, that uncertainty is just too much. And with that in mind, did you guys have a contingency in place if, for example, you said, Chris, you were a bit sort of anxious about what that valuation might be, but obviously you needed to do it anyway. Did you have a contingency in place if actually that didn't come up to where you wanted it? And would that have affected your pace or ability to reinvest in the next one and the next one? Or what was the plan if that had
Yeah,
happened?
that's a really. I don't think the finance question is probably something I always look to other people about how they do it, and I think it's a really good question. We had funds so we funded our first development. So that was money that actually if I'd left in the deal, it wasn't for an investor, so it wasn't like the end of the world because our money, we'd have sort of left it in the deal, so that was okay. So funny enough, that was my own. That was our own funds. But what was interesting during the first project, I found I've been worked for an investment bank for like 17 and a half years, and I had a decent pension. I found out about SAS pensions just on a networking event, and that's really motored us forward because I had a decent pot that I wasn't aware of, and from there, I actually bought the second property cash from the pension, where we were able to then do the refurb and borrow it minimum amount of money. So again, I would have been a bit stuck if that hadn't worked because I don't have money to pay back to my pension fund. But I think because it was my second project in the same area, I was a lot more comfortable with the investment. Yeah, we left a bit of money in the first one, but it wasn't like massive. And we knew that the second one we purchased for less, and the refurb was 15% less, and it was very close to the same rental, so we were a lot more comfortable. And I think the power of that has then sort of enabled us. Just to give you an example, what we did for the one in Stockport, I was able to. It takes what we've noticed with planning; it can take a long time. Stockport took nearly a year, which can cost a lot of money if you sat on bridging. But what I was able to do as well was we'd finished that development. I was then able to put a first charge on my pension onto the Stockport property. It sat there for nearly a year for it to go all the way through. But I borrowed like £200,000, and it cost me £2,500 for the year. So if you think about in the greater scheme of things, to borrow 200,000, my pension charged me 2,500 for the year, and then we had planning. Then we could refinance at the end. So SAS, I think the SAS pension has probably been a real game changer to us in our ability to move. I'm glad I didn't know it right at the beginning. I'm glad we learned a little bit in there, but it's probably been from a financial perspective, been
Best learning.
the best learning, and also it's great. I've been able to lend money as well. So you do like anything else, you do make a lot of friends when you lend money. So it's good with the networking and obviously for me around how things have worked and people I want to work with in the within the property industry. So I guess that's been a big plus. So we haven't needed. We've had a bit of investment.
SAS
Yeah,
pensions.
SAS pension. Yeah. I was just saying we've had a bit of investor money as well, but it's been mainly our money and the SAS. But we had a little bit of investor. But that's how we funded everything. Yes, we've used bridging and development finance, but the actual our deposit bits and that bit, that's how we've been able to move fairly quickly and move
That's
things
right.
forward.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Actually, I think there's a whole other episode that I'm sure that we could do on
I think so.
SAS
Yeah.
pensions and really putting them to use, because it is so interesting and can be so powerful. And actually, I know a number of people who are doing it and who have done it very, very successfully. And it definitely is actually something that I want to explore more. And it's really interesting to hear you guys talk about it. And doesn't sound like it was initially something that you identified as being part of the ability to grow your portfolio, but you've sort of been able to leverage some of the benefits from that now. Anna, do you manage these large HMOs yourselves, or have you outsourced that?
No, I still manage them. In fact, I think, occasionally you do help as well. But yes, I do manage them. I don't see the need to get anyone else involved when we are so close. They don't really need that much involvement because we do things right from the very beginning. We've got a system in place. So yes, I mean, I do spend a few hours, a week, maybe a day, in total a week managing all of them, but I enjoy it. So I wouldn't want to pass that on to someone else just yet. I might change my mind when we add more properties to the portfolio, but for now it's still with us.
Yeah, I'm sure you will pass them on. But yeah, I think it's a question for another day. But I think it's good. It's good for us to do end to end. From finding it all the way to the refurb. So you also know the type of issues that come up. So when we give it to an agent, eventually, we'll know if they're doing a good job or the type of things that might come up because and making sure that you're comfortable that they're providing the level of service that you want for your tenants, etc.
What do you find most challenging about managing the tenants, the houses themselves, the large HMOs?
I think we've been quite lucky in that respect where we've not really, come across a lot of issues with tenants. So there's been no huge challenges as such. I think the only challenge that we had was obviously when tenants decide not to pay. They decide that yes, they're exempt from paying. But we deal with it quite quickly. We stay on top of things like that. But overall, we've had a pretty good
Yeah, I mean, there's small things for you, isn't it? Ours is that the tenant might contact you at 11:30 at night on a Sunday, say, "I don't think my radiator's as hot as it could be." Those are the type of things where you wouldn't get that from a normal agent, but because you're on the WhatsApp and doing that, Anna, but I'll see Anna responding as an agent. Why is someone contacting? And you get these things. I think that's probably been the worst thing you get. They contact you at antisocial hours, not about the alarm going off or there's been an issue. It's something really relatively small. And they seem to always leave it to the weekend.
It's always a Friday. It's always a Friday. 6 o'clock on a Friday. I swear to you, it's always that time. I mean, I don't mind it because I'm a people's person, so I quite enjoy it. It does get to me sometimes, but now I've learned that we do have a cut of time. We don't pick up messages after 6 o'clock Monday to Friday. We only work Monday to Friday. So tenants across the whole portfolio are aware that we won't respond unless there's an emergency.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's really helped.
Yeah.
I know that what you've just described is actually one of the biggest bugbears of every HMO landlord. And I know that because in a previous episode, not too long ago, I actually recorded specifically about using WhatsApp to manage tenants and the pros and cons of it. And it is surprisingly to me, it has been one of the most popular, the most downloaded episodes. And I think because so many people use it, so many people find that, some of the same issues with it. But it's great to hear you sounding so positive about it, Anna, and also quite clear on that. This will probably work for a time for you guys, and at some point you'll just package it all up, and you might decide to give it somebody else, which is really interesting to hear as well. I said I wasn't going to put you guys on the spot, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I've been having a few conversations today, and actually doing a bit of research myself, and I run quite a large business. You're really, often thinking ahead and looking at the future when I buy things, when we set the rental levels, when we think about renewing our utilities. And there's a lot of stuff happening out there at the minute. Cost of living crisis, utility costs, interest rates maybe on the rise. And there's a lot of things to therefore think about when it comes to investing, and particularly investing in the types of properties that we do. What do you guys, I'm really interested just to sort of canvass your opinion on how you feel things are at the minute, what the immediate and maybe longer term future of our industry looks like. Is there anything that you're worried about? Is there anything that you're feeling quite confident about?
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, I'm confident on the HMO model. there will always be, and we see that from the tenant demand. Try and do that higher end, uh, property in a town that, for me, that will always work. People will be prepared to pay that extra 50, 75, £100. It's a concern for some people going, well, I get that and stuff, but if you put a really good product, you get a name. Do you know what? It will rent. And we've been surprised. And I think, for example, probably Crew, we beat the market from probably the highest rental out there. People were saying you'll never get that. And we were getting X amount for rooms. And we're like, well, that's proven. If you put a decent product there, people will pay it. I guess I'm confident with HMOs going forward, though, we've talked about the future. We may do apartments in future, but I really like the HMO model. The only thing, Andy, that concerns me, and I think this is probably for all HMO landlords, is just around, you've seen a lot of these things around some of the voir things around individual tax banding, for the rooms. And I think, that's becoming more prevalent, and it's just a bit of a concern around, obviously, how that then affects your price point. Obviously the legalities of that, I'm sure we could talk for a long time around that. But, I think just concerned that could have a knock-on effect, because either your tenant paying more money or you losing there. And I think, and it's a, if you do the bigger projects, you're doing 10, 13 rooms, then, you could get 13 council taxes. So it's just something we're mindful, and we're seeing more out there, and I think that one's still up in the air, the grey area. So, like everyone else, I'm hopeful that there'll be some further legislation, things that I know there's some court cases and stuff going on, but I think that's something hopefully that over the next sort of period there'll be sort of something more defined, because at the moment, that's probably a worry to us around our portfolio, and would
It
affect
is.
like it affect
Well,
anyone.
especially around commercial conversions, because obviously when you have a residential development and you converting a residential house into HMO, that's not so much
Mm.
a problem, because you will be under the radar. But if you do have those big commercial buildings converted into a residential, into HMOs, then they do flag up on the voir website. They pick you up quite quickly, and obviously from there it can be a case of being funded per room as opposed to per property. We're actually going through that at the moment, so we just have to wait and see where that takes us. But it is a concern, isn't
Yeah,
it?
we've not been banded yet, but I know a couple of people
Yeah,
have. So it's just,
the advice that I'll often share is try and stay under that radar, exactly like you said, Anna. But it's just not always possible, particularly when you've got planning permissions and conversions to think about. But I think you're absolutely right, and I share the same sentiment with you. I think that this is something we've got to watch very closely, and I really hope that some of these cases that are going through now are successful for landlords, and I hope that there's some sort of precedent set to
yeah,
kind of avoid the spread of this kind of, I describe it as a bit of a virus, really.
It is,
It's kind of one authority sees another doing it, and then they give it a go. So I think vigilance and definitely really kind of being quite pessimistic in factoring this in, or making amendments around the scheme to try and reduce the risk of it happening. For example, not making all the units self-contained, or maybe having a bit of a balance of ensuite. So a good piece of advice I think you've shared there, and one that I absolutely would second. Guys, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I've just, before we wrap up, I really want to make our listeners aware that the stuff and the projects that you're doing are absolutely fantastic, and I love looking at people doing amazing things with great designs and really well thought out schemes, and that is absolutely what you guys are doing. So just for our listeners, where is the best place to maybe reach out and kind of have a peek at what you're doing? And is there an opportunity maybe to work with you in any way at all? Or, what are there any opportunities out there for any of our listeners to kind of do something with you guys?
Yeah, definitely. I think you can reach out to us. We're on Instagram, obviously Parkhurst Properties. Got our contact details there. If I was it's admin@parkhurstproperties.co.uk.
There is a contact button there. So.
But look, we're interested in working with people and maybe doing joint ventures, or maybe also giving back and giving some advice to people, which we do. We've also talked about maybe we're going to start maybe running some open days in the future, so there might be sort of some stuff. So watch this space, so to speak. But we're definitely keen to sort of meet up, even if it's just for a coffee and a chat. With people that are looking to do that or doing something similar. They're based maybe in the northwest. But if not, then we do a virtual coffee. I've been doing plenty of those the last 2 years, like the rest of us. But we are we're keen to sort of network throughout the UK. So definitely, if people sort of reach out to us. Definitely keen to.
I think Instagram is probably the best platform for us.
Yeah, you manage it. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, guys, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on to the show.